If you've ever stared at a shelf of scotch and thought, I have no idea what I'm looking at, this is your fast track to understanding what matters, how it's made, what the labels mean, and why it tastes the way it does.
We're cutting through the fog. No fluff, no filler, just everything you need to drink smarter, talk scotch with confidence, and actually enjoy what's in your glass.
And if you enjoy our videos, please consider supporting our channel by purchasing one of our whiskey-inspired t-shirts. We've got a bunch of movie and TV show parody tees, shirts with fun whiskey sayings, and we also have shirts with our official logo to tell the world that you're part of this amazing whiskey community. The shirts are soft, stretchy, fit great, and we think you're gonna love them. Links are in the description below.
Let's start with a simple question. What actually makes Scotch, Scotch? Because it's not just whiskey with a Scottish accent. It's a legally protected category with some serious rules behind it.
Scotch is one of the most tightly regulated spirits on earth. If it doesn't follow the rules, it doesn't earn the name, period.
According to the Scotch Whisky regulations, here's what every Scotch must be. Distilled and aged entirely in Scotland. Made from water, yeast, and malted barley. Other grains are allowed in some styles. Distilled at less than 94.8% ABV. Aged for a minimum of 3 years in oak casks. Bottled at no less than 40% ABV. And it's only allowed to contain water and caramel coloring. That's it. No artificial flavors, no additives, no shortcuts. Just grain, time, and craft.
These laws don't just preserve tradition, they guarantee quality. When you buy a bottle of scotch, you're getting something authentic, traceable, and time-tested.
Now that we know what Scotch is and how it's legally defined, let's walk through how it actually gets made, from raw grain to the glass.
Scotch, just like all whiskey, is made from 3 core ingredients: water, yeast, and cereal grains. Sounds simple, but each one makes a key difference. The water source is often a point of pride. The barley is where the flavor begins. And the yeast, it brings it all to life.
Scotch isn't just distilled booze. It's a process with 6 core steps. Step 1 is malting. Barley is soaked in water and allowed to germinate. Basically, the grain starts to sprout. This activates enzymes that will later convert starch into sugar. Then it's dried in a kiln, and sometimes that's where the peat smoke comes in, if the distillery uses it, but more on that later.
Next up, mashing. The dried malt is ground into grist and mixed with hot water in a mash tun. This pulls out all those natural sugars. The result is a sweet, porridge-like liquid called wort.
Ew.
Yeah.
Then we move to fermentation. The wort is cooled and transferred to washbacks, where yeast is added. The yeast eats the sugar and produces alcohol, turning the wort into something like beer, known as wash.
Now comes distillation. The wash is pumped into copper pot stills, usually distilled twice in Scotch, though sometimes they do it 3 times. The first run pulls out low wines, which is a cloudy liquid in the 20 to 25% ABV range, and the second run refines it into new make spirit, the raw, high-proof whiskey before aging.
This spirit is clear and colorless, but full of potential. Next comes the long game. Maturation. The spirit goes into oak casks, often ex-bourbon or sherry barrels. In other words, the barrels were previously used to age bourbon or sherry wine, and the liquid takes on some of those flavors that were soaked into the wood staves. The spirit is then aged for a minimum of 3 years, but usually much longer.
During this time, the whiskey takes on color, aroma, and flavor from the barrel. The warehouse's temperature, humidity, and barrel's history all shape the final result.
Finally, bottling. Some whiskeys are filtered and diluted down to 40% ABV. Others are bottled non-chill filtered or at cask strength for more intense flavor. But we'll touch on those more later. And that's it. Scotch is ready for your glass. Now that we've covered the basics of how Scotch is made, let's zoom in on one step in particular that divides Scotch lovers everywhere: peat.
Peat is a type of organic soil made from compacted, partially decomposed plant material. In Scotland, they dig it out from the ground, dry it, and burn it to dry the malted barley. That smoke soaks into the grain, and you can taste it even years later in the glass. That's why peated Scotch tastes like campfire, sea spray, smoked meats, or even iodine, depending on how heavy the peat is and how it's used.
But don't worry, not all Scotch is smoky. In fact, most aren't. Speyside, Lowlands, and even some Islay distilleries skip the peat entirely. If you're curious about peat, start with something lightly peated like Highland Park 12 or Johnny Walker Black.
And if smoky flavors aren't your thing, there's a massive world of unpeated Scotch that focuses on fruit, honey, spice, and oak. Zero smoke required. But from experience, as someone who loves peat, once that smoke gets its hooks on you, there is no going back.
Now let's decode the labels. Single malt, blended Scotch, grain whiskey. It's actually easier than it sounds.
A single malt is made from 100% malted barley at a single distillery. It can be a mix of barrels and ages, but it all comes from one place.
Then there's blended Scotch, which mixes single malt whiskey with grain whiskey, often made from wheat or corn and distilled in column stills. It's lighter, smoother, and designed for consistency.
You'll also hear about blended malt. That's 2 or more single malts from different distilleries blended together. No grain whiskey, just malt. It's often complex, affordable, and a hidden gem for whiskey fans.
Now here's where it gets niche. Single grain and blended grain Scotch. These use grains other than 100% malted barley and are typically distilled in continuous stills. They're lighter in flavor and often used in blends, but there are some cool standalone expressions out there too.
To be clear, these terms aren't about quality, they're about ingredients and production method. In fact, there's a huge misconception that single malts are better in quality than blended malts. And while some may be, it's not a given. And now that you know what these definitions mean, you're getting closer to figuring out the right bottle for your taste. But this next section arguably plays the biggest role in a Scotch whiskey's flavor profile.
You know how wine has terroir, climate, soil, and place affecting the flavor? Scotch is the same way. Where it's made changes everything.
Scotland's divided into 5 main whiskey regions. And while it's all technically the same spirit, the flavors are totally different depending on the region.
Let's start with Speyside. This is Scotch Central. Over half of all distilleries in Scotland are here. Speyside whiskies are known for being fruity, sweet, and mellow. Often with sherry influence, think apples, honey, and dried fruit. You've probably heard of Glenlivet, Macallan, or Glenfiddich. They're all Speyside and perfect for beginners.
Next is the Highlands, the largest region geographically and the most diverse because it also includes many of the islands. You've got bold and spicy in the north, soft and floral in the south, coastal, and everything in between. Highland Park, Dalwhinnie, and my absolute favorite, Bourbon. Big personalities with big range. This region's a bit of a wild card.
Now let's talk about Islay, aka Smoke Island. This region's famous for peated Scotch. Those campfire, seaweed, and medicinal notes that either scare people off or turn them into fanatics. Ardbeg, Laphroaig, Lagavulin. If you've ever felt like your whiskey came with a side of barbecue smoke, it was probably from Islay.
The lowlands are next. Light, floral, grassy. These whiskeys are great for people just getting into Scotch or looking for something easygoing. Think Auchentoshan or Glenkinchie. The vibe here is crisp and clean. If Scotch had a white wine equivalent, this would be it.
And finally, there's Campbelltown. Once the whiskey capital of the world, now it's home to just a few distilleries. But what's left is wildly flavorful and full of personality. Campbelltown whiskeys are funky, briny, oily, and unforgettable. If you see Springbank or Glen Scotia, do not sleep on it. They're cult favorites for a reason.
Knowing the region is a cheat code for picking bottles that fit your taste. Smoky, sweet, spicy, light, it's all in the postcode.
Let's face it, if you're coming from the bourbon world, Scotch can feel like another planet. Different flavors, different rules, totally different vibe. But once you know the key differences, it all clicks. Think of it like 2 great songs in completely different genres.
First up, the barrel. Bourbon has to be aged in new, charred American oak barrels. So every batch gets those bold, sweet notes from fresh wood. Scotch usually uses secondhand barrels, often ex-bourbon or sherry, so the flavors tend to be subtler and more layered.
Next is the grain. Bourbon's at least 51% corn, which brings sweetness and weight. Scotch, especially single malts, is made with 100% malted barley, which gives it a drier, maltier backbone.
As for distillation, bourbon is usually distilled once through a column still, then proofed down. Scotch is often distilled twice in a copper pot still.
And let's not forget location. Scotland's cooler climate means Scotch ages slowly, gaining elegance and nuance over time. Bourbon, aged in hotter warehouses, gets those deep barrel flavors fast.
They're opposites in a lot of ways, but both can be incredible. If you're a bourbon drinker curious about Scotch, the key is finding bottles that match the flavor profiles you already love. If you think the grain is important, wait until you hear what the barrel does. In Scotch, the cask is king. It's responsible for as much as 70% of the final flavor.
Seriously, take the exact same spirit, age it in 2 different barrels, and you'll get 2 completely different whiskeys. That's the power of wood.
Most Scotch whiskeys start life in ex-bourbon barrels, shipped over from Kentucky or Tennessee. These casks mellow the whiskey and add flavors like vanilla, coconut, citrus, and toasted oak. Then there's sherry wine casks, usually Oloroso or Pedro Jimenez. These come from Spain and bring rich, dark notes like raisins, fig, baking spices, and roasted nuts.
And if you see a bottle labeled finished in port, wine, rum, or cognac casks, that's a second aging stage. It's like giving your whiskey an encore with a whole new wardrobe. Some distilleries use multiple casks in the aging process, hence names like double wood or triple cask. It's all about building layers of flavor.
And it's not just the type of wood. It's how long the cask's been used, what it held before, even the climate where it's stored. Every little detail adds character.
So next time you're nosing a Scotch, remember, you're not just smelling whiskey, you're smelling years of wood, wine, weather, and craft. Let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions in whiskey. Older doesn't always mean better.
We get it. There's something cool about seeing 18 years or 21 years on a label. It sounds impressive, but age is not the same thing as quality. A 12-year-old Scotch could blow the doors off of a 25-year if the barrels were better or if the spirit just hits its sweet spot earlier. Aging too long can actually backfire. If the whiskey sits in the barrel for too long, it can get woody, bitter, and overly tannic. Balance is key.
And here's where it gets interesting. Some of the most exciting whiskeys today are NAS, no age statement bottles. These are blends of different ages, crafted for taste rather than marketing.
So don't let the number on the label do the thinking for you. Let your nose, your palate, and your preferences be the judge.
Chill filtration is a cosmetic process. It removes particles that make whiskey go cloudy in cold temps or over ice. But here's the kicker. Those fatty acids and esters are part of the texture and flavor. Removing them might make it look prettier, but some say it thins the experience.
Many craft or premium bottles will say non-chill filtered on the label. That's often a sign they've preserved every drop of character. So if you're geeking out on labels, it's one more clue that the producer is all about flavor over flash.
Just like chill filtration affects texture, alcohol content matters too. Most standard scotches are bottled around 40 to 43% ABV. That's easy drinking and approachable for just about anyone.
But once you see a bottle at 46% or higher, that's usually a sign the producer is leaning into bigger flavor and less dilution. More alcohol means more oils, esters, and structure surviving the bottling process.
Then you've got the big dogs. Cask strength, also called barrel proof. These whiskeys are bottled straight from the barrel with little to no water added, often hitting 55 to 65% ABV.
Cask strength Scotch is intense, layered, and sometimes wild. It gives you the whiskey in its rawest form, unfiltered and uncut. But don't let the proof scare you. Add a few drops of water and you can unlock entire new layers of aroma and flavor. Stuff that was hidden behind the heat.
So if you're looking for complexity, depth, or just a bolder sip, pay attention to the ABV. It's not just about strength, it's about how much of the whiskey's soul makes it to the glass. Here's a detail most people miss on the label, but it tells you a lot about the whiskey. Natural color.
Scotch gets its color from the cask, not the grain. So a whiskey aged in sherry cask might look dark and rich, while one from a used bourbon barrel could be pale and gold. Same age, totally different look.
But some brands want every bottle to match visually, so they add a little something called E150A, also known as caramel coloring. It gives the whiskey a darker, richer looking tone.
Here's the thing, it does not change the flavor. But for a lot of whiskey drinkers, added color feels like smoke and mirrors. That's why craft distilleries and premium brands often highlight natural color right on the label. It means what you're seeing came straight from the barrel. No tricks. It's a small thing, but it tells you how transparent the brand wants to be with their product.
How do you actually drink Scotch the right way? You wanna know the secret? There is no one right way. Scotch is flexible and how you enjoy it is totally up to you.
If you're drinking it neat, go slow. Start with a small sip to let your palate adjust to the alcohol. Then go back in for the real flavor. Want to add a few drops of water? Do it. Especially with high proof or cask strength Scotch, water can open up the flavors and release hidden aromas. Prefer it on the rocks? Go for it. Ice can mellow out the bite and bring forward some different notes, though it will also mute some of the aromatics.
And don't sleep on Scotch cocktails. The penicillin, the Rob Roy, the Blood and Sand. These classic drinks show Scotch in a totally different light. There's no snobbery here. Whether it's neat in a Glencairn, over a big ice cube, or mixed in a cocktail, if you're enjoying it, you're doing it right. By now you know the basics, how it's made, what the labels mean, how to drink it, but there's one more thing that sets Scotch apart.
Scotch isn't just a drink, it's a legacy, a story told in grain, wood, and time. It's passed down through generations, from distillers in the Highlands to island warehouses battered by sea winds, to that one friend who pours you your very first dram.
Every bottle holds something deeper: craftsmanship, pride, place. From Speyside elegance to Islay smoke, Scotch reflects the land it comes from and the people who make it.
And the more you learn, not just what Scotch is, but why it matters, the more you connect to the global community that shares it, debates it, and celebrates it.
So whether this is your first taste or your 100th bottle, you're part of something bigger now. Welcome to the world of Scotch. And that is your crash course in Scotch. From the laws that define it, to the barrels that shape it, to the rituals that surround it. Now you've got the foundation to enjoy it on a whole new level.
But we're just getting started. If you want help picking your first bottle, check out our video on top Scotches for beginners.
Or check out our Scotch tier list, where we rank the top 25 selling Scotch whiskeys in the US.
And if you found this helpful, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends.
Until next time, cheers.